True diversity comes from the realization that we are all different.
As an individualist and an anarchist, I totally agree with this statement. Phew. For a second there, Jamie, I thought you were a Nazi.
And that these differences is what makes the world beautiful. It makes it a beautiful place to live in.
Yes, the fact that we are all different is a beautiful thing. Not one of us is the same as another.
The different seasons, the different colors, the different grasses, the different birds. Thousands and thousands of species of birds.
Amen, brother. Each blade of grass is different, even within their own species. Each bird is different from every other species of bird and every individual bird within their species. They each have their own unique personality.
If we were all one gray blob, our life would be boring. Why would we travel?
I guess we wouldn't know the difference. I mean, there's only one type of human species around now, the Homo sapien. And we do come in many different colors, shapes, sizes, mindsets, and somehow we can manage to keep ourselves entertained.
If Italy wasn't Italy, why would we travel to Italy?
If Italy wasn't Italy, why would we travel to Italy? What kind of talk is this? Are you suggesting that a rose by any other name wouldn't smell as sweet? Get to your point.
You're a nationalist because you understand these things to be true. You're a nationalist because you oppose this globalization, communist, one world, one nation, one people, fake reality.
And here's the punchline. You say I'm a nationalist because I appreciate individualism? Because I can acknowledge that sovereign countries have unique cultures? Did you know that each country has many different cultures? There's no homogeny going on almost anywhere. If you said, describe the typical American or describe the typical Chinese person, you'd be hard-pressed. Even if you said, describe the typical Italian, I'd have to say, Etruscans and Tuscany preceded the Romans and Umbria, while Greeks settled the south. Jews entered the country during the period of the Roman Republic, and Germanic tribes came after the fall of Rome. Mediterranean peoples like Greeks, North Africans, and Phoenicians entered through the south. And that's just one small country in Europe.
You're a nationalist because you're a realist, because you understand that we all have these differences.
This one world government idea that you so much fear is not the only other option besides nationalism. Much like globalism, nationalism is a deadly disease. It's worse than religion, but you are creating a false dichotomy. Controlling mankind is always about division. Religion creates the Ishmaels and the Isaacs, the Jacobs and the Esau's. I'd say the reality we have right now is so forced and so contrived. I mean, sure, in reality, brothers and sisters draw imaginary lines on a borderless planet and then fight others to expand their borders. People didn't start out scattered and separated by culture. All of us came from the same group of people in Africa. We originated together. We separated, we migrated, and evolved based upon our climate and our surroundings as time moved on and we were separate from one another. We splintered into different cultures due to separation. Cultures form based on the mix of people around. No one's culture has preserved from day one. There's nothing wrong with that. Some people just fear of their culture being changed or littered with other cultures. People who have a common heritage tend to flock together, and that makes total sense. We like to have a feeling of belonging. The cool thing about culture and human civilization is we're constantly evolving as cultures as we merge as a planet. As technology binds us closer together instead of buffers us. Some cultures merge, some cultures go extinct. It's the circle of life. There's nothing wrong with that. It's called the changing of times. It's called evolution.
It doesn't make one group better than the other, per se. But it just means that in order to preserve the beauty of the world, pushing us all together is not going to make that a thing, not going to make peace come.
We don't need to pretend that we all get along. Like I said earlier, I totally understand and agree with you that not everyone is the same. How do we divide things, though? By propagating even more nationalism? Don't you see that nationalism has played a part in dividing people for no other reason than based on what soil someone was born on or the color of their mother's vag that when they popped out of it? Are we supposed to assume that not pushing us all together is going to help? The reason why people hate each other is because we're brainwashed into thinking that the color of our skin and the country of origin we're from is enough to separate us as a part of the human race. There are black people who identify more with certain white people, perhaps. There are white people who identify more with certain black people, perhaps. But even all those you cannot put them all together as this is what black people are like, this is what white people are like, and they need to be separated. I mean, sure, there's a common trait, custom, and mindset between people of the same culture. It's because they hang out near each other. They grow up together and around certain things and have certain experiences that are similar, learning to speak certain ways, having certain prejudices, and they like certain foods. Nationalism is like the walls that perpetuate this idea of division. While you may want peace by keeping people separated by imaginary borders and oppressive governments, I say fuck government and fuck borders. Let us all be bound together by no debt but the debt of love.
We have to work in the confines of nature, and nature says that we're different, and we're beautiful in our differences.
Yes, beautiful in our differences as individuals, not as cultures. Cultures change so often, they're fluid. There's a spectrum too. Not one person is homogenous anymore. I mean, we've been spread out and branched out so much. They're so relative.
I'm this way because I am, and that's a great thing. And you are the way that you are because of the way that the earth made you.
Right on?
You're a nationalist because you understand that all of the diverse peoples of the earth have a right to a positive, self-actualizing, self-realization, and a deep-rooted sense of identity, sense of belonging.
Again, I'm not a nationalist. We all want to find a sense of belonging. It's why people join religious congregations. It's why people join fraternity organizations. It's why people identify themselves based upon their diet, their political affiliation, etc. It's why people join Nazi groups. The best way that we can have a sense of belonging is by looking around and noticing that we are all people who are all individually different, and we can flock to those who tend to strike our chord. We don't need others telling us what the criteria of this should be.
That each people has a right to their own self-actualization, their own destiny.
Pardon me for being a bit coy, but what do you mean by each people? Don't you mean each person, you collectivist?
And what this means is a Japanese Japan, an English England, and a Tibetan Tibet. What this means is that each of us has this identity, has a homeland.
Yeah, it's called planet Earth. Do you honestly think there have always been English people or Tibetan people from day one?
And has our own sense of belonging. And a true cooperation, a true international cooperation between the races, between the nations.
Okay, now I'm totally not speculating. You do want a division between races and a division between nations. Can't you see that this is exactly what perpetuates division and xenophobia?
Can only come when we realize this truth, when we realize that we are different. That doesn't mean that we can't work together, but it means that we have to realize these differences.
You and I are both Caucasian for the most part. I'm sure you're more familiar with your own heritage than I am with mine, though. But somehow I don't think that we would identify with each other. We're both Americans. I still don't think that that matters. What are your values? What are your ideals? These are things that draw people together once you break the barrier of nationalism and xenophobia. I agree that there are some cultures that are inherently better than others and more advanced. I mean, cannibalism is wrong, and I don't care what your culture is. Having sex with young boys is wrong. I don't care what your culture is. Defecating in public is wrong. It can carry diseases, and I don't care what your culture is. However, the best culture always wins out. These type of cultures are slowly fading away. Slavery, as a part of any culture, in the past or present, is wrong. Nationalism insulates poor cultural behaviors.
That we can't pretend that we're all the same. So we need to realize this. And this is why you're a nationalist, but you might not realize it.
Over and over again with the false dichotomy, just admit that you are a racist and stop trying to bring people into your bigoted mindset. There are more than two options. It's not globalism versus nationalism. Whatever happened to the leave me the hell aloneism? So, good day to all of my fine people from around the world. Be blessed and stay cool. And remember, strength spoken, shackles broken. This is Wayne Watley, signing out.
This world will pass away. Give my emotions with the wash